Welcome back to the English Speak Up Academy podcast.
Glad to be here.
We get a lot of questions about this, and today we're talking with a language learning expert to get to the bottom of it. Is it actually possible to learn English without a teacher?
A lot of learners are concerned about this, and it makes sense to ask. But when we look at how children learn their first language, it's pretty interesting. They don't have formal lessons.
Very true. We don't give babies textbooks. They just kind of absorb the language around them.
Exactly. So that already tells us that having a teacher isn't absolutely necessary to learn English. What really matters is that you are actively engaging with the language.
And we're really lucky that there are so many resources available nowadays to help us do that.
You got it. Apps, books, YouTube, podcasts like this one, even everyday conversations can all be valuable learning tools.
So let's give our listeners some tips they can actually use to learn English on their own.
Hmm.
What would you say is the most important thing?
I'd say it's really important to listen to English every single day. It's okay if you don't understand everything at first, but just being surrounded by the sounds and rhythm of the language will make a big difference.
I totally agree. It's like training your ears to pick up on the patterns of English. And anything goes: music, movies, podcasts.
Right. And, don't underestimate the power of role-playing. Even if you're just practicing basic phrases, it's a great way to get better at speaking and feel more confident.
I like that. Role-playing. Let's try it out so our listeners can hear what it sounds like. Let's pretend we're at a coffee shop. I'll be the barista, and you're someone who's just starting to learn English. How would you order a coffee?
Okay, let's see. I want coffee.
Okay. What size would you like? Small, medium, or large?
Large. Coffee, please.
Perfect. You got your point across. It doesn't have to be perfect. The important thing is just to start speaking.
That's so important to remember. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. It's all part of learning. And the more you practice, the better you'll get.
So listening and role-playing are great ways to start. What other techniques can our listeners try?
Technology is a huge help when you're learning a language. Apps like Duolingo, BBC Learning English, and Anki flashcards can really make a difference.
And there's so much good stuff on YouTube. There are tons of channels specifically designed to teach English, whether you want to learn grammar, vocabulary, or how to pronounce things correctly.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, we hope everyone keeps listening to our podcast to hear interesting conversations and practical advice on improving their English.
Absolutely. Now, here's a powerful tip that a lot of people miss: making a conscious effort to start thinking in English.
That's a game changer. Instead of always translating back and forth, try to actually describe your thoughts, actions, and what's around you in English.
Like, you might say, I'm walking to the store. I need to buy milk and bread.
Yes, those simple sentences train your brain to think in English. And that makes speaking and understanding so much easier.
It's all about immersing yourself in the language, even if you don't have English speakers around you all the time.
That's really key. So we've talked about listening, role-playing, using technology, and thinking in English. Those are all really effective strategies. But what about the social side of language learning? A lot of learners worry about not having someone to practice with.
I get that. The idea of practicing with someone else can be pretty intimidating. What would you suggest?
It's a valid concern, but there are so many options out there. There are online platforms like HelloTalk, Tandem, and even Facebook groups where you can connect with people all over the world who are also learning English.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to practice speaking, build your confidence, and hear different accents and ways of speaking English, all from the comfort of your own home.
Absolutely. And if you're feeling shy about talking to other people, start by talking to yourself in the mirror.
It might sound silly, but it really works.
Thanks.
It helps you practice pronunciation, get comfortable with the sounds of English, and become more fluent, all without worrying about what other people think.
Totally. And reading out loud is another really helpful technique. Reading aloud helps you focus on pronunciation, intonation, and how English sentences naturally flow together.
It's incredible how many different ways there are to practice. You don't need a teacher or a language partner to interact with English and improve your speaking skills.
You said it. It's all about being proactive, getting creative, and finding what works best for you.
We've gone over a bunch of different strategies for learning English independently, from listening and role-playing to using technology and just getting into that English-speaking mindset. There are a lot of different ways to get there.
Yeah, it's really empowering when you realize that you have all these tools and resources you can use to learn a language and become your own teacher.
I think a lot of people get stuck in that self-doubt cycle, though.
Yeah.
They get discouraged easily. It's so important to remember that every time you put in the effort, every step you take, you're getting closer to fluency.
We believe in every single listener out there. It's like a marathon, not a sprint, right? Enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, and celebrate your progress along the way.
Speaking of the learning process, we talked a little bit about making mistakes before. Can you tell us a little more about how important mistakes are when you're learning a language?
Yeah, people often think of mistakes as a bad thing, but when it comes to learning a language, they're actually super valuable.
I think so too. So many learners get caught up in trying to be perfect, and that can really hold them back.
Exactly. Think of mistakes as feedback. They show you where you need to focus your attention and help you grow.
Instead of being afraid of making mistakes, we should see them as opportunities to learn and get better.
I love that. When you make a mistake, don't let it get you down. Figure out why you made it and use that knowledge to improve.
It's totally normal. Everyone makes mistakes, even native English speakers.
For sure, give yourself permission to mess up and learn from it. It's just part of the journey. Let's talk about something else that's crucial for language learning: motivation.
Yeah, motivation is what keeps us going, especially when we hit those roadblocks.
It is. And it's important to figure out what really motivates you.
It could be something like wanting to get a better job or travel to an English-speaking country.
Or maybe it's just the pure joy of learning, the feeling of satisfaction you get when you understand a new language and connect with different cultures.
Whatever it is, you got to find ways to keep that motivation alive.
Setting realistic goals, celebrating your wins, and surrounding yourself with supportive people who cheer you on can really help.
And don't be afraid to try different approaches to learning. Find what works best for you and keeps things interesting.
Variety is key. If you start to feel bored or stuck, switch things up. Try a new app, a new podcast, find a new language partner.
Keep challenging yourself to keep that spark alive. Okay, let's talk about another super important element: consistency.
Consistency is absolutely essential. It's way more effective to study a little bit every day than to try and cram everything in once a week.
Couldn't agree more. Turn English learning into a habit. Even if it's just 15 minutes a day, it can make a huge difference.
Exactly. Those small, consistent efforts add up over time. And before you know it, you've made a lot of progress.
Repetition is powerful too. Going back over what you've learned helps cement it in your memory.
Totally. Build repetition into your study routine. Use flashcards, spaced repetition apps, or just go back and look at material you've already studied.
You know, as we're getting close to wrapping up, I'd like to touch on something else that's really important: setting realistic expectations.
Setting realistic expectations is so important. It takes time and effort to learn a language. There's no quick fix.
Be patient with yourself. Focus on making progress, not being perfect.
Notice your growth, celebrate your small wins, and don't compare yourself to other people.
Everyone learns at their own pace, and we all have different strengths and weaknesses.
Embrace what makes you unique and focus on your own progress. Don't forget that learning a language is a lifelong journey. There's always something new to learn and discover.
It's an adventure that never really ends. Stay curious, stay motivated, and keep exploring this amazing world of English.
Right before we finish up, I just want to say we really believe in you. You can achieve your language learning goals.
Don't ever give up. Keep practicing, keep believing in yourself.
And remember, we're here to support you all the way. Okay, let's move on to our last segment. We're going to answer some questions from our listeners.
I always love hearing from our listeners and sharing some insights.
Me too. Let's dive into those questions and learn together.
Our first question comes from Sarah in Canada. She asks, what are some good resources for learning English idioms?
Good question. Idioms can be tricky for English learners because they don't always mean what the words literally say. It's like trying to solve a puzzle.
The good news is there are a lot of resources out there that can help learners figure out English idioms.
One really good one is the website Idioms by the Free Dictionary. It's got a huge collection of idioms with easy-to-understand explanations and examples.
Another great resource is the book English Idioms in Use by Mike McCarthy and Felicity Odell.
That book gives you a really thorough overview of common idioms and how to use them correctly in different situations.
And of course, there are also lots of YouTube channels and podcasts that focus on teaching English idioms.
So, Sarah, I hope those resources give you a good place to start building your idiom vocabulary.
And remember, the best way to learn idioms is to actually hear them being used in real life.
Pay attention to how native English speakers use idioms when they're talking, in movies and on TV shows.
And don't be afraid to ask if you're not sure what an idiom means. All right, our next question is from Miguel in Mexico. He asks, how can I get better at pronouncing English words?
That's a really common question for English learners. Pronunciation is super important for fluency, but it can be tough to master.
Definitely. But if you put in the work and use the right techniques, you can absolutely make big improvements.
One thing that really helps is focusing on the individual sounds of English.
The International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA chart, is a great tool for understanding the different sounds and how to make them.
There are tons of online resources and apps that have audio examples and interactive exercises to help you practice those sounds.
Listening closely to native English speakers is also super helpful.
Pay attention to how they say words and phrases and try to copy their intonation and rhythm.
Recording yourself speaking English and then listening back to it can also be helpful. That way you can hear where you need to improve.
And don't forget about shadowing.
Shadowing is when you listen to a recording of a native English speaker and try to repeat what they're saying as closely as you can.
It's a great way to practice pronunciation, intonation, and fluency all at the same time.
Miguel, I hope these tips help you as you work on your English pronunciation. Practice really does make perfect.
The more you practice, the more confident and natural your pronunciation will become. Okay, last question. This one's from Yumi in Japan. She asks, how can I find someone to practice speaking English with?
That's a great question. Having a language partner can really take your speaking skills to the next level.
When you have a language partner, you get to practice in a real conversation and get feedback from someone who's a native or fluent speaker.
There are a few different ways to find a language partner. One popular option is to use online language exchange platforms like HelloTalk, Tandem, or italki.
Yeah, those platforms connect you with people from all over the world who want to swap languages.
You make a profile, tell them what your language learning goals are, and then you can search for partners who have similar interests.
Another way is to join language exchange groups or meetups in your area. Lots of cities have events or groups where you can meet other language learners and practice speaking.
You can also check with your local library, community center, or university to see if they have any language exchange programs.
And oh, don't forget about online communities like Facebook groups or Reddit forums. There are tons of groups specifically for language learning where you can meet other English learners and maybe find a language partner.
So Yumi, I hope these suggestions help you find a language partner to help you on your English-speaking journey.
Remember, it's important to build a good relationship with your language partner. Be clear about what you both expect, be respectful of each other's time, and try to make it a beneficial experience for both of you.
And that's it for our question and answer segment today.
It's been great answering your questions and sharing what we know.
Thanks to everyone who sent in questions. We really appreciate you being so engaged and curious.
I want to leave you with one last thought before we wrap up this episode.
Oh, I'm curious. What's been inspiring you today?
Just realizing that learning a language isn't only about gaining knowledge, it's about broadening your horizons, connecting with different cultures, and opening yourself up to new ways of thinking.
That's a beautiful way to put it. When you learn a language, you open up a whole new world of possibilities. You can communicate with people from different backgrounds, learn about their lives, and appreciate just how diverse humanity really is.
It is. It's about breaking down those walls, building empathy, and creating understanding between people.
That's something really worth striving for. Wow, this has been a really great conversation. We've covered a lot of ground today and given our listeners a ton of practical advice on how to learn English on their own.
Yeah, we've talked about active listening, role-playing, using technology, and that whole idea of thinking in English.
And we talked about some of the things learners worry about, like how to find language partners, how to get over being shy, and how to see mistakes as opportunities to learn.
It's all about helping learners take control of their own learning and use all the amazing resources that are out there.
And our podcast is here to give you that ongoing support and guidance as you work towards your English learning goals. Remember, we're here for you every step of the way.
Keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself.
You know, as we wrap things up, there's one thing that's really stuck with me from our conversation today.
Oh, I'm curious. What's that?
It's this idea that learning a language isn't just about filling your head with facts. It's about opening your mind to new experiences, connecting with people from different cultures, and seeing the world in a whole new way.
I love that. When you learn a language, so many doors open up for you. You can talk to people from all over the world, learn about their lives, and appreciate just how diverse and amazing humanity is.
It's about breaking down barriers, building empathy, and creating understanding between people.
That's a powerful thing.
Absolutely. So, as we end this episode, let's remember that language learning is a journey of self-discovery, cultural exploration, and personal growth.
Embrace the challenges, celebrate the wins, and never stop exploring the beauty and wonder of the English language.
And we'll be here to support you on that journey. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the English Speak Up Academy podcast. We can't wait to chat with you again next time.
Until then, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep speaking up.
Bye, everyone, and happy learning.